This is probably one of the most requested video on this channel. Hi, this is RGV and you're watching RGV Love, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe already. So long back, even when I was doing comedy videos, this was the most requested video. Even back then, even right now, every other week I get a message saying, please Roli, do a video on how to deal with in-laws. And I think the only reason that I haven't actually sat down and done this video is because A, I find the question to be incorrect. The question itself is wrong. And B, because I have never strategized how to deal with my in-laws. Like, I have never really given it a lot of thought. Our relationship, like, I have a good relationship with my in-laws, I like to believe, and that's because they are good people and I would like to believe that I am a good person. But if I think back, yeah, there are a few things that I did do, and I'm sure there are a lot of things that they did do to kind of make living together possibility. The reason I think that the question is incorrect is because the question, I don't know how it is, but so these are different people who have asked me these questions, okay, and every single one of them has asked me, how do you deal with your in-laws? You live with two mother-in-laws. So I live with my mother-in-law, and then my husband's dadi also lives with us, so I have a grand mother-in-law as well. So I live with two in-laws, and I have had questions, how do you live with two mother-in-laws? How do you deal with them? And I think the word deal is where it's incorrect. That is the reason I haven't been able to make this video, because I just feel that why do you need to know how to deal with your in-laws? They're people, they're not things that have to be dealt with. So nonetheless, because I'm sure there are a lot of people in the world, everybody's different, I'm going to do this little video. This is going to be kind of divided into two parts. I don't have notes. It's going to be all over the place for sure, because I have sat down here today to talk to you as I'm talking to my friend. So it is going to be a little all over the place, but I'm going to like divide into two parts in the way to how, you know, how to deal with your in-laws when you're just starting out. So if you're newly married, or if you're about to get married and you're just about to go live with your in-laws, how to deal with that. And then how to deal with the fact that when you're already living with your in-laws, where there is already so much history, how do you kind of change what has already happened. So number one, how do you start off? And even if you're already living with your in-laws, listen up, maybe there's some pointers that you can pick up. So first of all, you have to understand that it's an Indian family. When you're getting married into an Indian family, if the boy is living with his parents, it kind of goes without saying that he will continue wanting to live with his parents after the wedding. So firstly, if you don't want to live with your in-laws, if you're very, very sure that you want to live alone with your husband, please make sure that your partner knows that. Especially, I think in a love marriage, you would kind of already have talked this through. But if you are in an arranged marriage, then this is probably not a question. It is a question that's asked, but because you want to stay polite, you always say, no, I have no problems living with parents. But I would like to advise you that if you have an issue, say it out loud that you have an issue. There's nothing wrong in wanting to live separately, wanting to live with your partner. There's nothing wrong in that. It's the 21st century. You are an adult. You have all rights to live separately if you want to. But if you're not married yet, please tell this to your partner that, listen, I am not ready. Because you have to understand that if your partner is already living with his parents, then he kind of already expects you to live with them unless stated otherwise. So just make sure that every talks have been done. Now, of course, there's a huge thing that if you start living with them and you don't like them, and then you say you don't kind of get married and on the first day after marriage say, I want to live separately. Don't do that. That's wrong. That's completely wrong. Give them a chance. Live with them a little more. Live with them a few months. Live with them with a year. And then decide that if you can or cannot adjust. Don't just decide on the second day that I can't adjust with your parents. Don't do that. That's wrong. There is no way you will adjust with anybody on the second day of living with them. So kind of just give it a year. I think a year is a good time to judge whether you can or cannot live with another person. And if you can't, then take it from there. But remember, if the boy is living with his parents, and if the boy hasn't actually said that he wants to live separately, he doesn't want to live separately. So make sure that if you want to, you have talked it out, it's all clear, everybody knows what's going on. Now, once you are married, I think the major issue that in-laws face and even us girls face is that we were kids, right? We are kids when we get married, because most of us are living with our parents, and then we go ahead and go live with our in-laws. So even when you do get married, for your in-laws, you're like, okay, there's another child that's coming to our house. But that's where the confusion starts, because you're not really a child, you're actually an adult. And in your mind, you're also like, now I'm a married woman, and now I can take decisions, and now I can do this with my life. Now, because my parents stopped me from doing that, I can do that now because I'm married and I'm an independent woman now. But because you're living with your in-laws are like, now you're our child, so now you have to live within our boundaries. And I think that's kind of where the initial fights and the jhagdas and everything kind of, where things start going wrong. Because you want to be, for some things you want to be still a child, because you are, and for some things you want to be an adult. And I think it's kind of important for you to know what you want to be. So if you want to kind of not be a part of the financial decisions of the house, or if you don't want to be a part of, say, how do I put this, like being responsible for the house in general, or if you're like, nahin, jo bhi mummy papa kahenge, I'll do that. If you're okay with your in-laws taking all the decisions for you, you know, you have to decide where to draw the line, where you are okay with. So I know a lot of people who are okay with living as children like they were with their parents, so that's perfectly okay. But if you're like, no, I am a woman now, I am an adult, I want to change the interiors of my house, and obviously the in-laws have been living there for what, 20-30 years in the same house with the same kind of interiors, and they love it, there will be some kind of resistance. So you have to know, you have to kind of pick your fight, which is important for not just newly married but for like everyone. Know when to pick your fight, know when to know that, see, I'm okay with such and such boundaries and I'm not okay with such and such boundaries. And it's very important to communicate that in the politest way possible. Obviously don't like communicate that the next day. So in your mind, you should know what you're okay with, and you should know that while you are adjusting, your in-laws are adjusting too. On the same topic, the in-laws, when you come in, for them you're a responsibility. For them you're like, kisi aur ki beti is coming to our house, somebody else's daughter is coming to our house, and we are responsible for her. So they are going to put boundaries on you, because they are like, nahi, isko ye nahi karne dena, warna kuch problem ho gayi to uske parents kya kahenge. That's what's going on in their head, and that's what's kind of important to understand. Because simultaneously, the same thing that's going on in their head is like, okay, she's like the wife of our son, and she has to be responsible because she's an adult and she's a married woman, and this is what she's got to do. So I honestly don't know the solution to this whole thing, but I wanted to talk to you about this specifically is because you need to understand what your mindset and what your in-laws mindset is. And this is what where the actual problems start, because nobody really knows how to behave. You don't know how to behave like if you should behave like a child or an adult. The in-laws don't know if they should behave with you like a child or an adult. That's kind of where the problems start. Now you have to, like, you are the best person to know how your in-laws are behaving with you. So if they are behaving with you as a child, if they think you're like just another child of the family, then I think let's take both together. So if they're behaving with you as a child or they're behaving with you as an adult, I would say to start off in that manner itself. So if they think that you're the child of a house and they have set a boundary, don't on the next day or the next week start pushing those boundaries. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but listen me out. You are one person who has to adjust with, let's say there's just three of them, your husband and your both your in-laws. So you are one person who has to adjust with three people, and there are three people who have to adjust with one person. It's way more easier for you to adjust. Don't take it in a negative way. I'm not saying like you have to adjust forever, no. but it's way easier for you to kind of bend down would not be the correct word, but to kind of let things be and then slowly change them slowly. So if they're like, you're not going to stay out of the house after 9 p.m, don't pick on that fight, because you know that's not a fight that's possible. Fine, for the first day, for the second day, for the third day, for a week, for a month, stay within that boundary. Next month, stay out till 9:30. Month after that, stay out till 10. Stay, slowly kind of progress, slowly kind of push the boundary, because you have to understand, 3 people who've been living together and living with certain set of rules and certain set of ideology for, I don't know, 30 plus years, they will not change immediately for you. And I understand they should, but they won't. That's kind of what's important to understand, and you have to make that change happen slowly. So obviously if you don't want to fight, only then. If you want to fight, then do whatever. But if you kind of want to make it work, if you want to make it work that you and your family want to live with your in-laws, if you really want it, then that is kind of what I would suggest you, is to don't want to change them immediately. Don't change them immediately. That's not going to happen. Don't want that. That's not going to happen. Do it slowly. Do it over the time. They're going to slowly adjust to you. They're going to slowly start understanding what you want. They're going to slowly understand who you are as a person. They don't know you. They don't know you at all. You might have married your husband, but your in-laws do not know you. They have probably just met you a few times before the marriage. That's not knowing you. They haven't lived with you. Even when you get a new roommate, you don't know them. When you start living with somebody, that's kind of when you know them. So give them time to adjust to you. Give yourself time to adjust to them. On the topic of adjusting, how much should you actually adjust, right? So that is, I think, the toughest thing, because obviously you don't want to adjust, but you also have to understand that at some point you have to adjust. There are some things that you might have to change. There are some things that you don't have to change. You in your mind have to be extremely clear on what you are, what you are okay with changing and what you're not okay with changing. I am personally not okay with changing the fact that if my in-laws tomorrow tell me that, Roli, you have to go out and get a job, I am not okay with that. I am not a person who can do a job. I cannot work under somebody. That's not something I'm comfortable with. That was made very clear to them on day one, that if I want to work, like this was, we had this chat before we got married, that if I want to work, then I will work. If I want to do a job, then I will do a job. But I don't want an environment where I am forced to work or forced to do a job. That's something I am not comfortable with. I cannot be the breadwinner for the family. I cannot deal with that amount of tension on my head. I can't. That's not me as a person. What else? I believe in God. I believe in a supreme power, but I cannot go to the mandir every day and pray. My husband, every single day he does puja after he takes a bath. That's not somebody who I am. That's not somebody who I can become. So that is something. So my father-in-law did ask me that if I want to, the mandir is open, you can always go do puja, but I made it clear that I can't. It's not, I don't believe in going to a place to worship God. If I want, I'll sit here and worship God, because my connection with God is different than your connection with God. So these were 2 things that I was very strict about, that I don't want to change. But then of course there are a lot of other things that I did change, because I was like, theek hai, it's okay. The other things I can still kind of deal with, be okay with. So there are obviously boundaries that we cannot go out, we can't be out later than say 10:30, 11, which is okay, because it was the same with my parents. And although now I'm married and I'm like, you know what, why shouldn't I? Like, I'm married, I'm out with my husband, why can't I be out late? But it's something I was okay with, because it's my husband. I'm going out with my husband. If I stay out late with, later than 11:30 with him outside or inside the house, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. As long as he's with me, it doesn't matter if I'm out of the house or inside the house. So that I was okay with. I was okay with adjusting to, a little bit of a time limit, a little bit of a boundary there. Then of course, You know, small things like these which really don't matter. Like everybody sits together to have dinner or lunches, and at my place it was like whenever you're hungry, just eat. So you know, these are little small things that I adjusted with, although they're now changing back again, because now I eat with RGV instead of eating with the entire family, because he eats early. So again, you kind of have to just decide what you're okay with changing and change that, because honestly you have to change, you have to adjust. And I'm going to keep repeating myself, because you need to understand that living with somebody, even with your husband, you would be changing, you would be adjusting, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now if you're already living with your in-laws and you've had an history, you've had fights, and you still want to continue living with your in-laws, or your husband wants you to really work hard enough for you to live with your in-laws, then I think the number one thing that you need to learn is to learn to ignore. A lot of times so I have been blessed with in-laws who are really sweet and really nice. They have adjusted a lot for me, and they treat me as their daughter, and I have been lucky. But I know of people who have really bad in-laws, and even if the girl has tried a lot to adjust and a lot to kind of make it work, the in-laws are just not ready. And you have to remember they're people too, they're human beings. Huge possibility they're horrible human beings as well. So, but at the end of the day, they are your husband's parents, and if he wants you to make it work, then sometimes it's acceptable to make it work. Of course, it's like if it's like huge problems, and if it's like, I know, like mental torture kind of problems, I would never ever tell you to adjust to that, no. But if there are tiny little issues, like say your baby, you don't want your baby to have a walker. So my friend is having this issue. She doesn't want her baby in a walker. Obviously they don't, because a walker is a huge how do I say this, it's bad for the development of the baby, and her in-laws are insisting on getting her a walker, because that is what they know. In their mind, a child needs a walker, and because we are the Google moms, we know more. We know that the walker is bad for her child. So these are like very small problems. These are like very tiny problems in which you don't really need to separate from your in-laws because of it. But you have to kind of contain these problems, and you have to kind of make it very clear that there are some things that you would adjust to, there are some things you would not. So in my family, everybody knows that RGV will not get food that I won't allow. I know they still feed him tidbits of junk food when I'm not around, but they know it's wrong, and they don't like do it a lot. So even if it makes me a bad person in their mind, or even if, you know, for 5 minutes they're like, you know, why is Roli behaving like this, but they know that it's only for the betterment of the child of the house. So you have to understand that you have to be, I don't even know what point I'm making. See, I told you this video will be all over the place. But you have to understand that you have to be strict in some areas and you have to be lenient in some. So I know that a biscuit is being fed to RGV. Sometimes I'll interrupt it, sometimes I won't interrupt it, because I know the bond between the grandparents and the child should also be there. That's kind of how, in your problem, you have to understand that sometimes you have to kind of just ignore what's happening. Learn to ignore what's happening. Learn to ignore those taunts. The taunts are the worst thing ever. Learn to ignore the taunts. Go into another room. Go do something else. Make yourself so busy that you don't have time to listen to anybody else. Like, do your work, finish your work, do something else, make YouTube videos. Make yourself super busy. Put headphones on, put music on. Stop listening to what they're saying. Learn to ignore, and that is really important, because sometimes the issues are like really small. They're really small. They can be simply ignored and let go of. So that is where kind of you have to work. And I know it's not easy to ignore somebody. It's not easy at all to ignore somebody, especially if you live with them day in and day out. It's not easy. It's something you have to work for. It's something you have to work if you want to make it work. Another thing is that if you cannot ignore it, if you think that the comment that was made or the thing that was done is not something that you can ignore, then say it right then and there. Say it right then and there that I'm not okay with this. Don't wait for your husband to come back from the office and then tell your husband, and then tell your husband to talk to his parents. No, you tell them right then and there, I'm not okay with this. If you're strict and if you're like on point on day one, like when that incident happened and you told them you don't like it, it will never happen again. Trust me, it'll never happen again. If they know that you have a voice, if they know that you're not okay with it, they won't really do it deliberately. In the topic of husband, don't involve your husband in every single fight. That just makes the in-laws feel even more that you're not a part of them. Fight with them the way you fight with your parents. Like, come on, I know every one of us have fought with our parents sometime or the other. So with your in-laws, it's same as that. Fight with them like you'll fight with your parents. Apologize to them like you'll apologize to your parents. So I'm sure we've all had fights with our parents. We have been wrong, they have been wrong, we have apologized. Always. Not always, I'm sure they have apologized as well. Like, usually I was always wrong, so I don't know. But the point is, can you learn to treat your in-laws the way you treat your parents? That will solve a majority of your problems. So if I know for a fact that if, say, something wrong is happening, if I would scold my mom for it, I would scold my mother-in-law for that. I would tell both of them in this, not probably the same tone of voice, because obviously with in-laws you have to be a little formal, but I would make it clear that I'm not comfortable with this. And that is kind of where you have to understand that if you're not comfortable with something, say it then and there. Don't involve your husband. And when I say don't involve your husband, I just mean don't call up your husband in office and tell him, yaar, mere sath ye problem ho gayi, come back home. No. You wait for him to come back home, you calm down, and then you tell him what happened as an incident. Don't tell him to interfere. Don't tell him ki this is what happened, go tell your mom not to say this, or go tell your dad not to say this. No. Just tell him this is what happened, this is what I said, this is what my mother-in-law or your father-in-law said. That's it. That's it. Don't tell your husband to do what, let him kind of decide on if you are right or if they are right, or let him be the judge of whatever he wants to be the judge of, or just don't, he doesn't even have to react. So don't involve your husband. That is the biggest mistake that you can ever do. And why I say that is because you have been his wife for a very small amount of time. They have been his parents forever. No matter what you do or say, he will always have a spot, a soft spot for them. So you have to kind of, don't try to push them out of his life. Or if you're a boy who's watching it, don't try to push the girl's parents out of her life. That's incorrect as well. Just try to kind of tell your husband things in a way that he should just be informed about things that are happening in the house, so that in the future if there's a problem, he knows what's happened, he knows the history. But don't try to kind of get him inside your fight and tell him to fight for you. That's very, very wrong. That's extremely wrong to tell your husband to fight for you with his parents, unless of course the problem is so huge, if there was domestic violence or mental torture and things like that. Obviously this video is not for that. This video is for the tiny issues that happens, the little things, usne khana acha nahi banaya, she didn't serve my friends properly, the tiny little issues that happen. This video is only for that. And another, I think the last thing I want to tell you is that this video of course can go on and on forever, but one of the last things that I want to tell you is that stuff happens. Things would have happened. If you've had a fight with your in-laws, it happened. It is not happening. Start every day as a new day, as a fresh day. Don't think of things that have happened. If you still think that is something you cannot ignore, there's some problem that you have, talk it out. Most of the problems get solved once you talk it out. Once you go calmly and tell your mother-in-law, mummy ji, mujhe ye problem hai, aapne aise bola, mujhe nahi acha laga. Most of the problems can be solved out by that calm statement. That's it. If you don't want to talk about it, if you're somebody who's like, no, I just want to forget about it, then forget about it. Forgive and forget and move on. That is the most important. When you wake up tomorrow, wake up forgetting everything that's happened. Wake up with a clean slate and start your life clean and clear. And if you're a mother, it's so much more important for you, because all of these people are going to be involved in your baby's life. They're going to, everything and anything that you do is going to affect your baby. So if you're a mother, it's even more important for you to kind of forgive people, forget people, let them be, let them live their life, you live your life, enjoy, have a great day. Basically that. Those were my thoughts on how to deal with your in-laws. Now I don't know how helpful this is for you. If it was, then give it a thumbs up. If it wasn't, then I'm sorry I wasted your time. But honestly, this wasn't like a huge, oh my god, this is going to solve all your problems kind of video. This was just these are my thoughts on it. Also, I have a nose block. I'm coming down with a cold, which is like the saddest thing ever. Anyways, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button, go ahead, click it, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.